Welcome back to Kredict. Today is day 6 of 45-day Learn Blockchain Development Challenge with Kredict. In previous videos, we have covered many topics like conditional statements in Solidity, variables in Solidity, and many more other stuff. And in today's video, we are going to cover loops in Solidity. So let me quickly open my Remix ID. I hope you know how to open this Remix ID, and if you don't know, just watch previous videos. I think in second video I have described how to get this Remix ID, and the best part is this is a browser based IDE, so you don't have to install anything to get this up running. So let me just quickly open my file explorer here, and we have a folder in which we have created 3 contracts: calculate values, the basic calculator we have just created, conditional, a contract in which we have seen how the conditions work in Solidity, like if, else if, and else. You can watch this in previous video. And we have also our first smart contract. We have just left it here. Okay, so let me just quickly close all this. So in today's video, we are going to see loops in Solidity. So what is a loop basically? Let's see this condition. If you want to repeat a task, or if you want to do something repeatedly, then you use loops. And this is not new. Loops are a basic fundamental concept in all the programming languages. And if you are familiar with any of it, you may know how loops work. And as all the languages, Solidity also supports for loop and while loop. So just quickly create a folder here. Okay, so we have a folder, just create a file. I'm gonna say it as loops.so. You can name it whatever you want, and start first line as spdx license identifier. I'm gonna license it unlicensed. Okay, I think I have some spelling mistakes, so let me quickly correct this. Okay, so it's unlicensed, and the second line would be pragma solidity version, and here I'm gonna write 0.8.20 and just remove this one. Okay, so we've created our basic structure of contract, and now I'm gonna create my contract here. So I'm gonna write contract, the keyword for defining contract in Solidity. The name of contract is loops, or you can name it whatever you want. Okay, so in today's video, as I described earlier, we are going to see loops. So in Solidity, we have 2 types of loop. We have for loop and while loop. Okay, so why we have 2 types of loops and when to use which one? So let's understand this condition. If you know how many times you have to execute the loop or to perform a particular task, then you use for loop. Okay, remember this. When you know the number of iterations prior, then you use for loop. But in a situation where you don't know the number of iterations but know a condition, like do this until this happens, so in this case you are going to use while loop. If this is not clear to you until now, don't worry, we will see this with an example. First, I'm gonna show you example of for loop. And as this is Solidity, this does not have anything like standard output, so we cannot print here you can say the tables, the numbers. but I will show you something that you can get the idea how loops work in Solidity. First of all, to get any output, we should have to create a function. So let me quickly create my function. I'm gonna write it as function and loop printer, you can say. This takes a value, let's see. Okay, just keep it simple. For starting, I'm not going to give any value to this. Just write public and view, you can say, and this returns int. Okay, so this is our basic structure of a function that takes no argument and returns an integer data type value. So here we have created our function. So what we are going to do in this, we are going to create a for loop. Okay, so let me quickly show you the syntax for writing for loop. You are going to write for brackets and the body of loop that is going to be executed the times loop runs. And similar to other conventional languages, this will take three parameters. First is the initial variable. I'm going to say it as I equal to 0 semicolon. The range up to this variable goes, and write it as for now 10. And third is the increment or decrement, or the way you update your loop. Okay, so just quickly write pure here. Okay, so this is our loop. Now what we are going to do, we cannot print something here because this Solidity does not support the standard output. So we are going to return the result by adding it to a variable. Let me show you what I'm saying. I'm just going to create a variable here, sum. I'm initialize it with 0. Okay, and in this loop I'm just gonna plus 1 to it. Okay, and put the semicolon, and in last just return the value of sum. So before executing or deploying this contract, let me quickly describe what is this doing. So here we have a function which has a name, says loop printer, which is very obvious for this to print the loop, which is a public pure function, which means it does not change the state of any state variable in the contract, and it returns a value of integer data type. Okay, so this line says we have declared a variable named sum and initialize it with 0. Okay, and after that we have created a for loop which has a value, and you can see here we have declared the variable and initialized it in one go. But if you want to keep it simpler, or the way you like, you can write it as int I and then initialize it with initial value. These both things work exactly same, so there is no difference. But the preferred way is declaring the variable here itself. Okay, so we have declared variable and initialize it with 0, which states the initial value for the iteration, and we are using here I to count our iterations. And this says you can see the comparison operator which checks for if I is less than 10 or not. So until this condition is true, the loop is executing, and when this condition fails, the loop will be terminated. And if we want to change the value, we have to update it in some way. So we are updating it here as I++, which is just similar to I equal to I plus 1, or I plus equal to 1. These all three are same. You can write it as this, or the most preferred ways writing like this. Okay, and in this curly braces we write the code that we want to execute until the loop is running. So what we have written here, we have written sum plus equal to 1, or similarly you can write it as sum equal to sum plus 1, or for the upper approach you can write it as sum plus plus. And if you are not familiar with this plus operator, let me quickly show you what it does. Actually, if you write any variable, in this case sum, and plus plus after it, it updates the value in sum by 1. So we have seen it's like sum plus equal to 1, which is the same. To update a value by 1, we use sum plus plus. And the exactly is minus minus to decrement the value by 1. Okay, so I think you have know now what this loop does. And in last we have returned the value of sum. So we are expecting it to return. Okay, no expectations for now, just quickly deploy this and see what it returns. Then I will explain you what actually happens in the loop. So just quickly select our address, the contract, and hit deploy. Just open up this and click on loop printer. So you have seen it returned 10. Okay, because you can see from 0 to less than 10, which is actually the value of 9. So the loop ran 9 times and sum plus plus executed, the loop ran 10 times and sum plus plus executed 10 times. So the value of sum is equal to 10. How this happens? Let me explain you briefly. Initially we have the value of sum equal to 0, and by evaluating these conditions you can see the loop is going to run for 10 times. First for 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It executes till 9, but when the conditions reaches 10, this conditions fails and loop will be terminated. Okay, so the loop ran 10 times and this block of code also executed 10 times. That's why the value of sum becomes 10. And at last we have returned it. So here you can see the value is 10. And if we change this value for, like, we can say 5 here, delete this and redeploy. And now if you loop print, you can see here 15, because the initial value is 5 and it adds up 10 more to this. So this is how a for loop works. And you can also make this dynamic by changing the value here. You can change any of the value dynamically. So just create a function which takes a parameter and run the loop according to it. So let's say pass a parameter here, int, you can say n. I'm going to say it n and just put it here, n. And for simpler calculation, I'm going to mark it as 1, and this condition goes to less than or equal to. So this helps if we are going to run it 10 times, then the calculation is simple, like 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 10. Okay, this does not affect the output, but it's for better reading purposes. And just initialize this with 0. I'm quickly gonna delete this and redeploy. Just open up. Now it takes an argument, the value of n. So just quickly write here 56, and when you loop printer, it will return 56. So now you know the loop ran 56 times and the calculation became 56 and returned it. But this is not very interesting because it seems to be same value returned. So just quickly make it to do something for us. Okay, so we are going to return the multiplication tables of different numbers. So just treat n as numbers, and we are going to return up to sometimes. So just keep this. We are going to multiple of 5, you can say, and the n. So instead of this, just write it as answer, and I'm going to write it answ answer, and I'm going to write as sum equal to answer equal to answer multiplied by n, and at last return answer. So just remove this and this also. So what this loop is gonna do, the value we have passed is returned by multiplying to itself 5 times. Just quickly see, just delete this and deploy. Here for simple, I'm gonna just put 2 here. What is the problem? Okay, sorry, the answer is 0, so multiplied to 0 is always 0, so just write it as 1 and redeploy this. Let's deploy and open up and write 2. So here you can see it's returned 32. So what actually happens, let me show you. We have passed n and it has 1. The value of n is 2. So in first case it becomes answer equal to 1 multiplied by 2, which results to 2 actually. But now the value of answer is updated to 2. So in second time, answer equal to 2 into 2, which results to 4. And in third iterations, it becomes answer equal to 4 into 2, which becomes 8. And again answer equal to 8 multiplied by 2, which results 16 obviously. And in last and fifth iteration, it results like answer equal to 16 multiplied by 2 results in 32. So this is basically a bit calculator. You can type the number of iteration and it returns the bit of numbers. This is very simple. You can similarly do this with any number. So we have not changed in the actual code, so we can rerun this. Just delete or deploy. Okay, just write it here as a big number like 678. Now you can see this returned a very big number. So this is how the for loop works. I hope this is clear to you, and try this for loop by yourself and try to do some other stuff. You will learn a lot. And if you have any doubt, just put in the comment section. We will reply to you and try to solve your problem there. So just close this for now. So this is how a for loop works in Solidity. Now we are quickly going to see a while loop with the same example we have initially built. So just gonna delete this completely and this also. Okay, so what is while loop? Just write it here, while loop here. Okay, so what is while loop? As I told earlier, while loop is used when you don't know the number of iterations, but you know the condition when to stop. Okay, so if you remember the first example we have seen, we are iterating from 10 times from 0 to 9 and adding 1 each time to our pointer value, or you can say the sum which we returned in the last. So let's quickly do the same with while loop. I'm going to write the code first and then I will explain you it bit by bit. Okay, so I've written the code here. This is the exact same thing we have done in first example of for loop, in which we are returning the sum of 10 iterations, adding 1 each time. So this is the syntax for while loop. In this bracket, we will define the condition until which the loop will run, and in these curly brackets, we define the statement or block of code we want to execute while the loop is running. So you can see we have the same variable as previous, sum equal to 0, and we are adding sum plus plus each time and returning the sum. But here we are not initializing or updating the value inside these brackets in while loop like we do in for loop. So this is the syntax. You have to declare the variable or the condition you want to check. You can pass here any expression, or you can say any boolean expression. Whatever you want to pass, you can pass it here. This is just for an example. I pass I equal to 0 and check for if I less than 10, execute this loop, do sum plus plus, and also increment the variable, the I variable we are using, because if you are not updating this, the loop will run for infinite because there is no updation, and it always remains to 0, which is always less than 10, and it causes a big problem for us. So just quickly test this out and what this results. So open this tab here now, compile your, or you have auto compile on, that's also good. Just click on this, delete the previous one and click on deploy. Just open up this and click on loop printer. So you can see it returned 10 as the same example we have seen in for loop. So this works fine here. Now just quickly create the same example we have in, like we are returning the multiple of any number. Just quickly write it here int n, and I'm going to write it as answer equal to 1 because 0 multiplied to anything real 0, and just write answer, delete this, equal to answer 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 multiplied by n. Okay, and instead of 10 we are going to write it as 5 and just return answer. Okay, so this will work. Let's quickly test this. Let's deploy, open this up, enter 2, loop printer, and you can see the same result as in for loop. We have got 32. Yeah, in some conditions you can use both for loop and while loop, but we generally use for two different scenarios where we know the number of iterations. We use for loop, but we don't know the number of iterations, we just know the condition when to stop. Then we use while loop. So you can choose any of these, and this does not really matter, it depends on you, but we have certain conditions to choose one over each other. Okay, so but here interesting point I want to mention when using loops in Solidity, because Solidity is a smart contract building language and it has to do something on blockchain. And if you're familiar, blockchain consumes gas fees on any transaction which change the state of blockchain, or you can say any execution that changes the state of blockchain is known as transaction. And in blockchain, while you are doing transactions, it will cost you some gas fees. Okay, and creating loops are very gas consuming process, so always use your loops very carefully, and especially in while loop condition, always make sure that your loop never goes in infinite condition. So in today's video we have covered for loop and while loop and how both of these loops works and how we can use it. In next video I'm gonna show you how you can prevent from going infinite to both of these while and for loop. Just for loop doesn't go in infinite condition very easily, but while is very prone to go in infinite condition because it stops only when a condition met, and if a condition doesn't met, then it will all alone go. Okay, so this is all for today. I hope you are following this challenge with me, and we are going to meet again in next video tomorrow. Till then, stay safe and keep watching Kredict.